Welcome back, builders! Today begins our adventures with the Hawk X250. My main goal with this series is not to discover if the Hawk X is a good first motorcycle for somebody with no real riding experience, but rather, is it a decent first motorcycle for my fellow motorized bike enthusiast? Mainly for you guys out there already used to getting your hands dirty wrenching on cheap Chinese motors and bikes. Back around 2020, I decided to give the RPS Magician a shot. At the time, it was one of, if not the cheapest, mail-order dual-sport motorcycles you could find.
Anyways, let's see if we can get through this trail without falling apart.
Given the price, I thought I had kept my expectations for the bike's quality in check. I was wrong. Having built, ridden, and repaired cheap motorized bikes for years, I was hoping the Magician would be a nice stepping stone into a more capable and legal way to explore the back roads around town. Knowing full well that the Magician would require extra attention, much like the motorized bikes I was already used to, I had failed to anticipate one major problem: vibration. Vibration and the issues it can cause were not foreign to me. In fact, it's something many of us motorized bike builders are all too familiar with, mainly in the form of nuts and bolts rattling off the bike. However, on bikes with tiny two-stroke motors, a few lost bolts was easy enough to deal with. Unfortunately, when scaling up to a larger, faster bike with a single-cylinder four-stroke that shakes more than a 12-inch Alpine, those vibrations can begin to overwhelm the rider and the bike. As expected, plenty of hardware was magically disappearing from the Magician. I could deal with that, but what I was not prepared to deal with was cracked motor mounts, frame welds, gas tanks, and electrical components self-destructing from vibration in less than 1,000 miles. One of the biggest appealing features about motorized bikes, gas or electric, is the minimal tools and specialized equipment needed to build, maintain, and repair them, mainly no welding. Maybe I just got unlucky with mine, but at the rate at which the Magician was trying to tear itself apart, it was no longer worth my time. I ended up parking that bike at just over 3,000 miles. It may only be natural for some individuals to think I was pushing the bike too hard, but this bike almost never saw highway travel and was kept below 40 miles an hour for most of its life, just hitting the back roads. From what I could tell, the original Hawk and Hawk DLX had a better track record for survival, but the rattle trap had already left such a bad impression on me that I decided to stay away from the unbalanced China thumpers. That brings us to today, and my first 100 miles on the counterbalanced Hawk X. I'm emphasizing counterbalanced here, but the bike is simply called the Hawk X250. Ordered from TX Powersports, the bike arrived 1 week later. I'll leave a link in the description. The title and bill of sale arrived 5 days after the bike. Thankfully, TX Powersports dated the title and bill of sale around the same time the bike arrived instead of the day I bought it. This is important because in Louisiana, the Department of Motor Vehicles likes to charge late fees when registering anything. It's a well-known fact that many riders talk with their wallets, which is why these bikes are so appealing, and the fact they deliver to your door. Inevitably, a keyboard warrior will tell you to buy something more expensive while refusing to give you the money to pay the difference. Admittedly, if you can save up for a name brand bike, you'll very likely have a better experience. However, this is what I could afford, so this is what I bought. The question is, now that I have a cheap option that probably won't shake itself apart, is it a good option for other motorized bike builders on a budget who are looking for a practical and fun upgrade? As always, only time will tell, and that's what I'm here to find out. I'll be documenting my experience with the Hawk X as I go, covering all the good times and headaches that arise. First impressions look promising. I have 120 miles on the Hawk X at the moment, and so far nothing has fallen off the bike. I'm not blind to the fact that this small vote of confidence does not hold much weight, but compared to the first 100 miles on the Magician, the difference is beyond pleasant. And of course, not to compare apples and oranges here, but it's pretty much unheard of to have a first 100 miles on a gas motorized bike be uneventful. Turns out putting a counterbalance on a single-cylinder thumper makes a big difference. The Hawk X is indeed smooth. In fact, the difference is night and day, a term that gets thrown around way too much on YouTube but holds true on this bike. The only out-of-the-box issue that I've run into so far is an unstable idle that sticks around until the bike is heat-soaked. It seems to line out okay-ish once the bike gets hot, but some carb tuning or replacing is certainly warranted. After my first test ride, I checked the valve lash. The intake looked good at .004 inches on a cold motor, but the exhaust was tight, so I adjusted it to .005 inches cold. Recommendations from other riders online are all over the place, and the owner's manual did not give valve specs, so I just went with my gut. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. The only other adjustment I made to the Hawk X so far is tightening the chain after about 90 miles. From a motorized bike standpoint, this is a normal adjustment, but hopefully won't turn into an every 100 mile adjustment on the Hawk, because 100 miles racks up quick on an actual motorcycle. I have a higher quality chain ready to go just in case. On the Magician, the quality of the chain did not seem to matter due to the rear suspension not being in line with the chain, causing it to tighten when you sit on the bike and loosen when you get off. Chain drops on the Magician were a common encounter, but thankfully the Hawk's chain and rear suspension line does not seem to affect chain tension. Shout out to Moto Cheese for his build video on the Hawk X, I'll leave a link in the description, as the bike did not come with build instructions, and I'm certain I would have messed up something without his help. For my fellow motorized bike builders who may be moving onto your first motorcycle, be it the Hawk or something else, here are a few things you may not be anticipating. Many of these things may seem like common sense, but they'll be hitting you all at once. Weight. I can give you a number, but it won't mean much. The first time you throw your leg over the Hawk, you're going to immediately be transported into the realm of, oh, this is serious, as you notice the weight of the bike. Much like your first time driving a car, but with no protection around you when you screw up. It may seem obvious that an actual motorcycle weighs significantly more than a motorized bicycle, but this added weight will greatly affect how, when, and where you ride, at least until you get used to it. On that note, I'd like to point out that you've already dropped your bike. Several times, in fact, you just don't know it yet. Power. Motorcycles don't have pedals for a reason. Although the Hawk is by no means an overpowered bike, you'll be pleasantly surprised to find that the bike can power through any situation you find yourself in as long as the tires have grip. Yet another aspect that seems obvious, but this greatly opens up new travel paths. Range. I started with a full tank, then topped off when the surprisingly accurate odometer hit 100 miles. Adding 1.1 gallons to the bike, I can safely say that out of the box I'm getting 90 miles to the gallon, with mixed back road and highway travel. Compared to a well-tuned gas bike, this range is technically not much better. However, the larger tank and speed at which you are able to comfortably reach your destination stretches out your practical range exponentially. And for those of us who live in one of the many states where motorized bikes have legal issues, this will further amplify the range capabilities of the Hawk. Speed. On paved roads, your natural expectations about speed are probably spot on. As a 210-pound rider, I'm hitting 55 miles an hour without feeling like the bike or myself is fighting for dear life. In my experience, I've found that most motorized bikes can be made to happily cruise at about 30 miles an hour. This is the general expectations, but there are obviously exceptions. That being said, I find that on dirt and gravel roads, the comfortable cruising speed of the Hawk is about the same as a motorized trail bike. This mainly comes down to limited riding experience and the weight of the bikes. The momentum of the much heavier Hawk requires more concentration, where the motorized bikes are more forgiving when the tire drops traction. On to traffic, a dynamic of riding that has very few set-in-stone rules and requires adjustments for different riding conditions. This may likely have the biggest impact on a motorized bike rider moving up to the Hawk. On a bicycle of any kind, there's a good chance your mindset is used to riding as far to the right as possible to avoid being rear-ended by the endless barrage of 2-ton death machines. Here you are in luck to a certain extent. You have a slight advantage over first-time motorcycle riders who have less experience on two wheels. Most of my fellow gas and electric motorized bike riders have a good sense of defensive riding and how other drivers react to two-wheeled vehicles. This will help, but now that you're riding in traffic instead of next to it, your brain's going to kick into overdrive. You will quickly realize that it does not matter who's right and who's wrong, only who's still alive. A bit beyond the scope of this video, but doing everything in your power to help other drivers see and acknowledge you on the road will go a long way in avoiding a one-way trip. And now that you'll be a part of the flow of traffic, things like sitting in a lane at a stoplight with cars to your left and right, or traveling 55 down a 2-lane road with a truck in your rear view, will quickly wake you up to the reality of your surroundings. The takeaway from all this is that your past experiences for both riding and wrenching will absolutely come in handy, but you'll need to be prepared to learn the differences very quickly. As far as my first experience adventure riding the Hawk X, it was pleasant. It's going to be a while before I can say much about this bike, but I am hoping it will do the trick, because getting lost down some of these back roads which I had never seen before is one of my favorite things to do. Unlike on the gas bikes, I don't have to worry about limitations for time due to speed, and unlike on the electrics, I don't have to worry about range, as any gas station will keep me going. But I would like to be very clear about one thing: comparing electric bikes and gas motorized bikes to an actual dual sport motorcycle is just not fair. They're meant for completely different situations, and if one is already fulfilling your needs, then there's no reason to stress out about upgrading to the next. But because I often find myself daydreaming on Google Maps about the back roads further away than the range my other bikes could take me, this is a very pleasant upgrade for myself personally. Where I live, I have miles and miles of back roads that I still haven't explored. Some of them look absolutely beautiful, and places where when you're out there, you're pretty much by yourself. And that's where a bike like this comes in handy for me. So moving forward, I'll keep you guys up to date with how well this bike does. I have a good feeling about this, but I've been fooled before. Hopefully it holds true to the way it feels now. So I hope you guys got some useful information out of today's video, or at the very least were mildly entertained. And as always, ride safe.